don't challenge and change the U.S. election system, there'll never be another Republican president elected again. President Trump should not concede. We're down to less 10,000 votes in Georgia. He's going to win North Carolina. We've gone from 93,000 votes to less than 20,000 votes in Arizona, or more votes to be counted. There are allegations of system failure, fraud. John James, do not concede. These computers in Michigan.
Chaos 2020. You knew it was coming. After months of engineered chaos on the streets, engineered chaos came to America's polling places. Hundreds of thousands of ballots turned up seemingly out of thin air. Poll workers in battleground states clocked out just hours after the polls closed and then announced that they wouldn't start counting ballots until a day or 2 or 3 or 9 days after Election Day. Shockingly, in the nation's most hotly contested districts, Republican poll watchers were blocked from exercising their legally protected rights to observe ballot counts. This was the crazy scene in Wayne County, Michigan, where GOP observers got locked out of a voting center on Wednesday. Michigan poll workers even taped pizza boxes to windows to obstruct poll observers' views.
I don't know if you can blow it up because it's not big enough. Stop it from doing that. Pizza boxes to cover this room as we speak right now.
GOP poll worker and activist Matt Seeley was there, and he described to me what happened when he and several hundred observers and challengers showed up to do their jobs.
All of a sudden, they locked the doors and said, we're at capacity, no one else is coming in. And then they announced, if you guys want to go get lunch, go get lunch. So a lot of our workers left to go get refreshment in this ballroom that they provided us with, thinking that when we left the room, they'd let another Republican in to take our place, right? Mm-hmm. Not only did they not let them in, they didn't let the person who went to lunch back in. Meanwhile, the Democrats inside the counting room were provided with an area where they could have bottled water, coffee, donuts. They brought in Jimmy John's box lunches, so they never had to leave the room. So they knew in advance they were going to lock us out.
And here was the scene on Thursday outside the convention center in Detroit, where GOP observers were locked out as Democrats conducted their secretive count away from prying eyes. As I warned you weeks ago, anti-Trump forces have used COVID as a grand ruse to hijack the election process. Big League Politics reporter Shane Trejo obtained an audio recording of a Detroit poll worker training session where participants cackled at using social distancing to obstruct challengers' views.
That's important because they can come behind your table. But if you don't have 6 feet, they can't come back there. They cannot wear anything that signifies who they work for. It has to be on their card. So they can't walk in with a party or anything on, just like you can on your mask, they can't either. Any questions?
So for 6 feet back, once they have really good vision, they can actually see.
Exactly. Yes, they got really good vision, or they brought their binoculars. 6 feet. That's the rule, right? And you are entitled to your 6 feet.
This is all part of the plan. He who harvests the ballots controls the ballots. He who counts the votes controls the votes. This is not conspiracy theory, it's conspiracy truth. Look at Pennsylvania. After winning a ruling from a federal judge to get access to the ballot counting process, GOP poll workers in the Keystone State were still locked out. Can you believe this photo? It looks more reminiscent of a banana republic than our once proud and functional constitutional republic. Trump campaign surrogate Corey Lewandowski condemned the obstruction.
They have 8 attorneys fighting us to see these ballots inside. The court order is in effect. They will not give us access, and the sheriff has decided not to come down here to enforce that court order. The sheriff of your county will not come down and enforce a court order. What is going on in this city? What are you hiding? Open up the doors, let us in, let us 6 feet away so that we can have a free and fair election.
Here's the thing. The FBI and the GOP both have known for years what the left's election thieves have been up to. Independent citizen journalists and watchdogs like Megan Barth in Battleground, Nevada, have collected evidence of dirty voter rolls for years, and nobody did nothing.
And so I've been reporting on voter fraud for 5 years. We had a whistleblower from the post office come forward in 2016 saying that ballots went missing. We handed all of our evidence, including 3,000 envelopes, over to the FBI. These envelopes represented returned campaign mailers from supposedly actively registered voters. We turned all of this evidence over to the FBI, the local FBI office, and they never opened the case.
It's going to take all hands on deck to stop this long-planned steal. It demands the very kind of coordinated and concerted citizen activism that the establishment GOP has long neglected. Look, many Beltway Republicans are AWOL. Where are they? But the rest of us who are fighting to preserve a sovereign nation for our children and grandchildren have no choice but to raise hell and raise our voices.
Stop the steal! 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 Stop the steal!
The Biden crime family stealing the election! The media's covering it up! The Biden crime family stealing this election! The media's covering it up!
If we don't speak up now, it's people like this homicidal maniac and his mob pals who are going to run this country.
Right now, I'm gonna blow his brains out. I'll kill him.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.
For joining us this morning. COVID is rising in your state as well. Cases are up, hospitalizations are up, deaths are up. Are you prepared to work with President-elect Biden to get it under control?
Well, it is a regional increase that we're seeing. We are testing more. And frankly, George, I'm not going to take advice from Governor Cuomo. He has the second worst death rate per 100,000 people in this nation. He's at 173 deaths per 100,000 per capita. South Dakota's at 54. I appreciated that President Trump gave us the flexibility to do the right thing in our state, and we'll continue to do that. He let me do my job. But the other thing that I think is going on here, George, is that this is all premature. This is a premature conversation because we have not finished counting votes. There are states that have not been called. And back in 2000, Al Gore was given his day in court. We should give President Trump his day in court, let the process unfold. Because, George, we live in a republic. We are a government that gets its power from the consent of the governed. That is the people. They give their consent on Election Day. Election Day needs to be fair, honest, and transparent. And we need to be sure that we had an honest election before we decide who gets to be in the White House the next 4 years.
Governor Noem, do you have any evidence that it wasn't an honest election? You had a tweet earlier this week saying it was rigged. Do you have any evidence at all of widespread fraud? I've spoken with Republican secretaries of state in Georgia, in Arizona. I've spoken to Republican officials across the country. They have come up with zero evidence of widespread fraud.
And that is not true. That is absolutely not true. People have signed legal documents, affidavits stating that they saw illegal activities. And that is why we need to have this conversation in court. The New York Times itself said that there were clerical errors. If you look at what happened in Michigan,
fraud, Governor, that's
that
very
we had
different.
computer glitches that changed Republican votes to Democrat votes. You look in Pennsylvania, dead people voted in Pennsylvania. So, George, I don't know how widespread it is. I don't know if it'll change the outcome of the election. But why is everybody so scared just to have a fair election and find out? We gave Al Gore 37 days to run the process before we decided who was going to be president. Why would we not afford the 70.6 million Americans that voted for President Trump the same consideration?